There's a kind of pain that doesn't scream. It doesn't cry out for attention. It doesn't announce itself to the world with tears or outbursts. Instead, it hides behind a smile, behind laughter, behind the carefully chosen words that make it seem like everything is okay. But deep down beneath the surface, it's anything but okay. The silent struggle is one of the most dangerous kinds of suffering because no one knows it exists except the person carrying it. And even they sometimes try to convince themselves that it isn't real, that it is as bad as it seems, that they can just push through it without ever addressing it. But here's the truth. Pain doesn't disappear just because we ignore it. It lingers, waiting for a moment of weakness to seep through the cracks. It builds over time, turning into something heavier, something darker, something that eventually becomes unbearable. Why do people pretend? Why do they act like they're fine when in reality they're falling apart inside? The reasons vary. Some do it out of pride, unwilling to admit that they're struggling because they believe it makes them look weak. Others do it out of fear that if they open up, they'll be judged, misunderstood, or worse, dismissed. Some do it because they've been taught their whole lives that showing emotion is a sign of weakness, that real strength is in keeping it together no matter what. But what happens when you hold on to something for too long? Imagine carrying a heavy backpack. At first it's manageable. You adjust your posture, shift the weight around, and tell yourself, it's fine, I can handle this. An hour passes and it gets a little harder. Your shoulders ache, your back stiffens, but still you push forward. A day goes by, then a week, then a year. That weight doesn't go away. It just buries itself deeper into your muscles, pressing down on you more and more until one day it's too much. And in that moment when you finally collapse under the weight, you realize it wasn't the backpack itself that broke you. It was the fact that you carried it alone for so long. People who suffer in silence often become masters of disguise. They laugh at jokes, they show up for others, they excel at work, they continue their routines as if nothing is wrong. They become so skilled at hiding their pain that even those closest to them have no idea what they're going through, and that's the scariest part. Because when pain is invisible, it's easy to neglect. When no one sees the struggle, no one offers help. And when no one offers help, the suffering only deepens. But here's something most people don't understand. Pretending is exhausting. It takes energy to act like you're fine when you're not. It takes strength to hold back tears when you want to break down. It takes discipline to push through each day when all you want to do is stop. And after a while, that exhaustion catches up. The mind gets tired. The body starts to feel the effects. Sleepless nights become normal. The weight in the chest gets heavier. The motivation to do anything, even the things that once brought joy, fades. And slowly, the person who was once full of life starts to disappear, replaced by someone who is just surviving. Some people will say, why don't they just talk to someone? Why don't they just ask for help? But it's never that simple. When someone has spent years pretending they're fine, admitting the truth feels impossible. They fear that no one will understand, that their pain will be dismissed as not that bad, that they'll be told to just get over it or be grateful for what they have. And so instead of reaching out, they retreat further into themselves, building walls so high that even the people who want to help can't get through. And then there's the shame of feeling weak, the shame of not having it all together, the shame of struggling when others seem to be doing just fine. Society teaches us to glorify strength, but the version of strength it promotes is flawed. It tells us that strong people don't cry, don't break down, don't show emotion. But that's not strength, that's suppression. Real strength isn't about pretending, it's about facing reality. But when people have been conditioned to believe that showing vulnerability is the same as showing weakness, they lock their pain away, burying it deeper and deeper until it consumes them from the inside out. The truth is, suffering in silence doesn't just affect the person going through it, it affects everyone around them. When someone is silently struggling, their energy changes. They may become distant, irritable, or withdrawn. They may stop engaging in conversations, lose interest in the things they once loved, or isolate themselves completely. The people around them may notice the shift. But because the person insists they're fine, they assume it's just a phase, something temporary. And so the cycle continues. The struggle remains unseen, the pain remains unspoken, and the person's suffering continues to slip further away. But the most dangerous part of the silent struggle is this. The breaking point comes without warning. One day, everything seems normal. The person is still smiling, still functioning, still carrying on as if nothing is wrong. And then suddenly, they're not. Because when pain is ignored for too long, it doesn't just fade away, it erupts. Sometimes in the form of a breakdown, sometimes in the form of destructive behaviors, and sometimes in the worst way possible, when the person who's been pretending for so long decides they can't pretend anymore. There are countless people walking through life right now suffering in silence. They wake up every day, put on their mask, and convince the world that they're okay. But deep inside, they're fighting battles that no one can see. And the scariest part, many of them believe they have no other choice, that this is just the way life is, that struggling alone is better than risking judgment, rejection, or misunderstanding. Their pain is real, their struggle is real, but because it's silent, the world doesn't see it. And that's why so many continue to suffer, because the hardest battles are often the ones fought alone. Pain doesn't disappear when you ignore it. It doesn't fade just because you push it down, bury it, or pretend it's not there. Instead, it lingers. It sits in the back of your mind, in the pit of your stomach, in the tension in your chest. It manifests in ways you don't even realize. Short tempers, restless nights, exhaustion that no amount of sleep can fix. It eats away at you slowly, making everything in life feel heavier. At first, suppression seems like the easiest option. You tell yourself, I don't have time for this. You convince yourself that dealing with the pain will only make it worse. So you pack it away, tucking it into the corners of your mind, thinking that if you ignore it long enough, it will simply vanish. But pain doesn't work that way. It doesn't dissolve over time, it festers. And the longer it sits there unaddressed, the more damage it does. The cost of suppressing pain is higher than most people realize. It's not just an emotional burden. It affects every aspect of your life. When you suppress pain, it seeps into your relationships. You become distant, even if you don't mean to. You lose patience with the people you care about. You lash out over small things, not because they truly bother you, but because your mind is so overwhelmed with everything you refuse to deal with. The people around you start to notice, but they don't understand what's happening. They think you're just moody, distracted, or uninterested. They don't realize that every word they say feels like an added weight on an already unbearable load. Suppression also affects your body. Stress and pain don't just stay in the mind, they manifest physically. You carry tension in your shoulders, in your jaw, in your chest. You start having headaches for no apparent reason. Your energy drains faster. Your immune system weakens. You feel exhausted even after a full night's sleep. Your body is telling you something is wrong, but because you've trained yourself to ignore the signs, you dismiss them. You push through, telling yourself, I'll deal with it later. But later never comes, and the damage keeps building. And then there's the mental toll. Suppression breeds anxiety, depression, and burnout. You think keeping your emotions locked away will protect you, but in reality it only isolates you. You become trapped in your own mind, replaying memories, reliving moments of pain, carrying burdens that were never meant to be carried alone. It gets harder to focus, harder to find joy in things you once loved, harder to feel anything at all, because when you suppress pain, you don't just numb the bad, you numb everything. Over time, suppression turns into something much worse. It becomes a habit. It becomes your default response to any kind of emotional discomfort. Instead of processing your emotions, you shove them aside. Instead of facing the pain, you distract yourself. Working longer hours, keeping yourself busy, diving into anything that keeps you from being alone with your thoughts. But the problem is, no matter how much you distract yourself, the pain doesn't leave. It waits. It lingers in the silence, creeping back in the moments when you least expect it. Sometimes suppressed pain finds a way to escape in destructive ways. It can turn into self-sabotage, pushing away the people who care about you, ruining opportunities, convincing yourself that you don't deserve happiness. It can turn into unhealthy coping mechanisms, drinking too much, overeating, isolating yourself, anything to dull the ache. And what starts as an occasional escape can quickly turn into something you depend on just to get through the day. And then there's the breaking point. Suppressed pain doesn't stay hidden forever. Eventually, it erupts. Sometimes it happens in the form of an emotional breakdown. One moment you're fine, and the next, you're drowning in everything you tried to ignore. Sometimes it manifests as overwhelming anger, rage that feels uncontrollable, directed at the wrong people for the wrong reasons. And sometimes it shows up as complete detachment, losing all motivation, feeling nothing at all, moving through life like a ghost of the person you used to be. What makes suppression so dangerous is that for a long time it feels like it's working. You convince yourself you're managing just fine. You go through the motions, keep up appearances, handle responsibilities. No one notices what's happening beneath the surface, but inside the pressure is building. Every unspoken word, every ignored emotion, every moment of pain that you refuse to acknowledge is stacking up like bricks on your chest. And the longer you hold it in, the heavier it gets. Some people go years, even decades, suppressing their pain. They become experts at pretending. They tell themselves that as long as they can keep functioning, everything is fine. But deep down, they know the truth. They feel the weight of it every single day, and the longer they carry it, the harder it becomes to imagine a life without it. They start believing that this is just who they are now, someone who feels empty, someone who struggles to connect, someone who can't shake the feeling that something is missing. They forget what it was like to feel truly happy, truly free, truly at peace. Because when pain is buried for too long, it stops feeling like something separate from you. It becomes a part of you. People will say, time heals all wounds. But that's not true. Time doesn't heal wounds, healing heals wounds. And healing doesn't happen by ignoring pain, it happens by facing it. But when you've spent years suppressing your emotions, the idea of confronting them feels impossible. The thought of unraveling everything you've buried is terrifying. So you keep going. You keep pretending. You keep telling yourself, I'm fine. But deep inside you know, this is costing you more than you ever realized. For as long as we can remember, we've been taught to be strong. Society glorifies the idea of toughness, keeping it together, pushing through the pain, never letting anyone see you struggle. We're told that showing emotion is weakness, that crying is a sign of failure, that admitting we're hurting makes us less capable, less worthy, less in control. But that is a lie. Real strength isn't found in suppressing emotions. It's found in the ability to face them. And that requires something most people are afraid of, vulnerability. Vulnerability is often misunderstood. People think it means being weak, being fragile, being at the mercy of others. But the truth is, vulnerability is one of the greatest sources of power a person can have. It's the ability to stand in your truth, to acknowledge your pain, to stop pretending and finally be real. Think about it. What takes more strength? Pretending everything is fine when it's not, putting on a mask every single day, carrying your burdens alone and slowly breaking under the weight of it all, or having the courage to say, I'm struggling, to admit I need help, to let someone see the real you, the unfiltered, unpolished, unguarded version. Vulnerability is terrifying because it requires us to remove the armor we've built around ourselves. And that armor has been there for years, maybe even decades. It has protected us. It has kept us from being hurt, from being judged, from being rejected. It has allowed us to navigate a world that often tells us we need to be perfect to be accepted. But that same armor that protects us is also the thing that keeps us trapped. It doesn't just block out pain, it blocks out love, connection, and healing. It creates a barrier between us and the people who genuinely care about us. It isolates us, making us believe we have to face everything alone. The fear of vulnerability is deeply rooted in the fear of being misunderstood. What if I open up and they don't get it? What if I share my pain and they dismiss it? What if I let my guard down and I end up getting hurt even more? These fears are real, they are valid, but the cost of never taking that risk is far greater. When we suppress our pain, we convince ourselves that no one will understand, that we are alone in our suffering. But the reality is, every single person on this planet has struggled. Every single person has felt pain, doubt, insecurity, and fear. And when we choose to be vulnerable, we give others permission to do the same. We break the illusion that everyone else has it all figured out. We create space for real, honest connections, the kind that remind us we're not alone. But vulnerability isn't just about sharing pain with others. It's about being honest with yourself. How many times have you told yourself, I'm fine, when you weren't? How many times have you ignored what you were feeling because it was easier to pretend it didn't exist? How many times have you pushed through exhaustion, heartbreak, loss, grief, and disappointment without ever giving yourself the grace to process it? We live in a world that values productivity over well-being, that tells us to keep moving, keep achieving, keep proving ourselves. But no amount of success, no amount of external validation, no amount of keeping it together will ever fill the emptiness that comes from ignoring what's really going on inside. Being vulnerable with yourself means giving yourself permission to feel, to sit with your emotions instead of running from them, to acknowledge the things that hurt instead of burying them. It means asking yourself, what do I really need right now? And actually listening to the answer. And yes, it's uncomfortable, because vulnerability means feeling things fully. It means experiencing sadness, anger, fear, and uncertainty without numbing them. It means facing the parts of yourself that you've been avoiding. But here's the truth. You cannot heal what you refuse to feel. And the longer you resist vulnerability, the longer you prolong your own suffering. One of the greatest myths about strength is that it means being self-sufficient. That real strength means never needing anyone. But humans were never meant to go through life alone. We were built for connection. And yet so many people suffer in silence because they believe asking for help is a sign of weakness. But look at the people who inspire you the most. The leaders, the visionaries, the ones who have truly transformed their lives and the lives of others. They didn't get there by pretending they had it all together. They got there by being real, by facing their pain, by reaching out when they needed support, by embracing vulnerability as a tool for growth rather than something to be ashamed of. And still, many people resist because vulnerability feels risky. It feels like opening yourself up to the possibility of rejection, of judgment, of betrayal. And yes, sometimes that happens. Not everyone will understand you. Not everyone will be able to hold space for your truth. But the right people will. And the only way to find those people, the ones who truly see you, who truly care, is by taking the risk of being seen. Vulnerability is not about oversharing. It's not about seeking pity. It's not about unloading your pain on anyone who will listen. It's about being honest. It's about dropping the facade. It's about giving yourself the freedom to be exactly who you are without shame, without apology. When you allow yourself to be vulnerable, something incredible happens. The weight you've been carrying starts to lighten. The loneliness begins to fade. The walls that once kept you trapped start to crumble, making room for something new, something real. But the hardest part is making that first move, acknowledging the truth to yourself, admitting that pretending isn't working, taking the step, no matter how small, to let someone else in. Vulnerability isn't a one-time decision. It's a practice, a daily choice, a commitment to living authentically, no matter how uncomfortable it feels. It takes courage to let yourself be seen. It takes courage to admit when you're struggling. It takes courage to stop pretending. But vulnerability isn't just the path to healing. It's the path to freedom. For years, maybe even your entire life, you've been carrying this weight. You've convinced yourself that pretending is easier, that suppressing the pain is the only way to survive. You've worn the mask, played the role, kept everything locked inside. And maybe you've gotten so good at it that no one even suspects the battles you fight every day. But deep down you know, you feel the exhaustion, the numbness, the quiet ache that never really goes away. But here's the truth. Living like this isn't sustainable. At some point, something has to change. You cannot keep walking through life carrying this pain alone. You cannot keep sacrificing your peace, your joy, your well-being just to keep up the illusion of strength. The cost is too high. The first step to breaking the cycle is recognizing that the life you've been living, the one built on suppression, avoidance, and pretending, isn't the life you were meant for. You weren't put on this earth just to endure. You weren't born just to survive each day, dragging yourself through the motions, feeling disconnected and empty. That is not your purpose. That is not your destiny. But breaking the cycle means making a choice to stop running from yourself, a choice to stop numbing the pain, a choice to finally face the things you've been avoiding for so long. And yes, that choice is terrifying because when you've spent years suppressing your emotions, the idea of opening them up feels overwhelming. You worry that if you start, you won't be able to stop, that the pain will consume you, that facing it will be worse than bearing it. But what you don't realize is that the pain is already consuming you. It just does it in quieter ways. It shows up in the exhaustion that never fades, in the relationships that feel distant, even with the people you love, in the moments of joy that feel fleeting, like they slip through your fingers before you can even hold on to them. It's already there, shaping your life in ways you don't even notice. Breaking the cycle doesn't mean you wake up one day and suddenly feel healed. It doesn't mean you just decide to be happy and everything changes overnight. It's a process, a commitment, a daily decision to do things differently than you've done them before. One of the most important steps is allowing yourself to feel not just the easy emotions, happiness, excitement, gratitude, but the hard ones, the sadness, the anger, the grief, the disappointment. You've spent so long pushing those feelings down, but what if you gave yourself permission to experience them fully? What if, instead of running from them, you sat with them? Not to drown in them, but to understand them. Because emotions don't exist to hurt you, they exist to guide you, to show you what needs healing, to help you understand yourself on a deeper level. And then there's the hardest part, reaching out, letting someone in, asking for help. Maybe that means talking to a trusted friend, opening up to a loved one, or seeking professional support. And yes, that's terrifying. Because what if they don't understand? What if they judge you? What if they see the real you and decide you're too much? But what if they don't? What if instead of rejection, you find acceptance? What if instead of judgment, you find understanding? What if instead of feeling alone, you finally realize that you never truly were? The people who love you, who genuinely love you, want to know what's really going on. They want to help, they want to support you, but they can't if they don't know what you're going through. You've spent so much time convincing everyone that you're fine that they believe you. Not because they don't care, but because they trust that if something was wrong, you'd tell them. But now you have a choice, continue pretending or take the risk of letting them in. Breaking the cycle also means changing the way you speak to yourself. Pay attention to the thoughts running through your mind. How often do you criticize yourself? How often do you tell yourself you're not enough, that you should be stronger, that you shouldn't feel the way you do? You would never speak to a friend that way. You would never tell someone else that their pain isn't valid. So why do you do it to yourself? You have to unlearn the belief that struggling means failing, that needing help means weakness, that being vulnerable means you're broken. None of that is true. You are not broken. You are not weak. You are a human being carrying emotions, experiences, and struggles that were never meant to be carried alone. And now it's time to start treating yourself with the same compassion and kindness that you give to others. Part of breaking the cycle is also learning how to let go, not just of the pain, but of the guilt, the shame, the belief that you should have handled things differently. You cannot change the past. You cannot go back and undo the years of suppression, but you can decide what happens next. You can decide that today is the day you stop letting the past dictate your future. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean pretending like none of it happened. It means freeing yourself from the weight of it. It means no longer allowing it to define you. It means forgiving yourself for the things you didn't know back then, for the ways you coped, for the times you shut down when all you really wanted was to be seen. Healing is not a straight line. There will be days when you feel like you've made progress and days when you feel like you're right back where you started. But every step forward, no matter how small, is still progress. Every time you choose honesty over suppression, every time you allow yourself to feel, every time you open up instead of shutting down, you are breaking the cycle. And as you do, something incredible happens. The weight you've been carrying starts to lighten. The mask you've been wearing starts to slip away. And underneath it all, you begin to rediscover the version of yourself that's been buried for so long. The one who is capable of joy, of deep connection, of true fulfillment. The one who doesn't just survive but actually lives, because that's what this is all about, reclaiming your life. Choosing to no longer be a prisoner of your own pain. Deciding that you deserve more than just getting through each day. You deserve peace. You deserve healing. You deserve to be seen, to be understood, to be loved. Not just by others, but by yourself.